Hi everyone, this is Tiago JDF, and you're listening to Snippet, my weekly podcast where I share snippets of coding knowledge. When I was first starting as a junior programmer, I would always get lost when looking at backhand code. I assumed that part of it was because I was a junior developer, that I did JavaScript instead of whatever language was used in that backend, and that front-end development was just very different from backend. I worked with backends in PHP or Python with different frameworks, and every time I would feel lost during the first couple of weeks. No matter how many times I would encounter the MVC pattern, the model view controller, I would always feel disoriented and would have a hard time figuring out in what files was the code I needed to change and navigating that folder structure. As I worked more and more on such projects and gained experience in software architecture, I realized that the problem was not so much the complexity of the code or the patterns, but how the code was organized and structured into different folders and files. If you did front-end before React and the advent of component frameworks, you probably faced the same issue. HTML files were in template folders, CSS files were in styles folder, and JavaScript would just be in the script folder. These folders would then have several levels of subfolders divided by pattern, or maybe by functionality, or some other random measure that was decided at the time, like utils, assets, whatever was convenient. Things were separated by format, or pattern, or some other random logic that kind of made sense. And the senior engineers in the project would always feel like this architecture made perfect sense due to their habit, and they would not easily empathize with the hardships of new developers. Now, have you heard about Ebb's rule? Ebb's rule comes from neuroscience and can be simplified as neurons that fire together, wire together. One of the main takeaways from this rule is brain plasticity, or the fact that when different neurons work together to achieve something, they all create stronger connections and group into networks. Code should be similar. Code that works together to achieve something starts to be tightly coupled and should be grouped together. If you have a template, CSS, JavaScript, and some assets that render a certain route, they should all be in the same folder that represents that route. If they form a reusable component, they should all be in the folder for that component. This also applies to the backend. If you have an API with a specific view that uses a form and a specific serializer, instead of having a folder with all the views, one with all the forms, or one with all the serializers, those files should be together. Once you understand this, you will understand why JSX, who contradicted all of the conventions at the time, is now so widely adopted and paved the way for the component frameworks. Before JSX, it was commonplace to have code split based on file format and not on functionality. Adding a feature meant adding 3 new files and changing a few more across different folders and subfolders. JSX allowed for logic, template, and style to all coexist in the same place, making it easier to create or change code when working on a specific functionality. This also applies to hooks. Before hooks, your logic in your component would be spread around different lifecycle methods. Now you can put together the logic that works together in the form of a custom hook. Before I go, let me just say that this doesn't mean that you should have a monolith with all of your code. No, this means that you should group and split your code based on functionality. To sum it up, code that works together stays together.